You're listening to Q4 Radio, Q4.org, and 1680 AM, where we create beauty and defend it.
You are listening to Magick Radio Chicago Special Edition, the coverage of Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride 2017. Now, I'd just like to take one moment before we get to the interviews to make a very special dedication. Out there somewhere in Q4 land is a very special fan. She's always been a big supporter of Magick Radio Chicago. She's always liked and shared and been very supportive, and I'd never even met her till recently. And as I understand it, she was really brokenhearted at the fact that she could not attend this year's Pagan Pride. She had a very serious health issue and required some surgery, but she is a part of the scene, and many of our fans out there do know her. So if you're out there listening, I would like to dedicate today's show to Mrs. Chris Michelle Deisness. If you're out there, this one's for you. All of us are sending a bunch of thoughts and healing energy your way. And on to the show. Welcome to Magick Radio Chicago, streaming live from 1680 AM and Q4.org, the station that creates beauty and defends it. I'm your host, DK Prince, and with me today is my good friend and fellow Q4 host, Peter Propaganda from Wormwood Radio. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, today, you and I are going to be discussing our day out last Sunday at Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride 2017, where we went around and saw some really interesting things, some interesting ceremonies, some vendors, political activists, healers, and all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life who were interested in paganism.
What a cool event.
It was really cool, wasn't it? You know, I didn't have any money that day, and I keep kicking myself every year. I just keep kicking myself, and I was like, why? Why do I not show up with any money? There's so many cool stuff I could have bought. What about you, Peter?
Oh, man, I was broke, too.
I know. It's been, I don't know. I'm not an astrologer, but I have a sneaking suspicion that's we're probably in some kind of, I don't know, something.
Oh, man, don't even get me started about my finances.
Oh, my week's been harsh, yes.
Yeah,
mine too.
I actually had someone open a car door and take my mirror off.
No.
Yeah,
oh, that's awful.
And it's putting me out of some of my work.
Oh, man. that sucks. Yeah. But we were invited by Twyla York, who is the organizer for Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride, to come in and sit in and and spend our day having interviews with some of the good people who went there. We spoke to a lot of really interesting people, and we want to share that with all of our listeners today out there in Q4 land. Go for a quick musical segue, and when we come back, we'll begin our 115th episode of Magick Radio Chicago, Saturday, September the 16th. And you're listening to Magick Radio Chicago, streaming live every week from Q4 Radio.
All right, we are here today with Sarah from A Peaceful Path, and welcome to Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride 2017.
Yay!
So tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
I work for A Peaceful Path, which is located on 6721 West 111th Street in Worth, Illinois, 60482. And you could log on to us on social media, www.apeacefulpath.biz, and we're also on Facebook and so forth. I'm there on Fridays and Saturdays, and I read 13 Witches runs and incorporated with tarot. And I also do complimentary cauldron smudgings from my own smudge that I make myself energetically. And I also do bay leaf wishes during the waxing phase of the moon, going towards the full moon, so I can help my clients manifest.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, when I met you outside, you gave me a complimentary smudging, and I feel better already.
Hey, everybody can use a smudging always. And I also use a selenite wand with my smudges, so this way it's not just a smoke in the herb clearing you, but white light energy.
Mm-hmm. Now, just for our listeners who aren't aware, what is selenite?
Selenite is a whitish, very iridescent-looking stone that is very good for cleansing and giving off white light and attracting angels. So it's a very good healing stone. You could actually put your stones on top of it. It's one of my favorites, and it will cleanse the stones in itself. You could keep it in your mojo. Yes.
Oh, I see.
Oh, there's no way of getting rid of that, but it's not water soluble. You can't put it in water. It will melt.
If I recall correctly, it's a very brittle type of crystal.
Yeah. Yes, it's more like saltish a little bit. But it's one of my favorites, and I love incorporating it for protection, just for keeping my area cleansed, clear, especially on your altar, especially when I'm doing divination. Love it.
And what brings you to Pagan Pride?
I am reading for A Peaceful Path, and this is my second year reading at at Pagan Pride of Chicago. And
What kind of readings do you do?
13 witches runs, and I incorporate the tarot, but I'm only doing the witches runs because they didn't, they're like, there's enough tarot readers, but it's actually an odd form of divination. Not very many people do it. You're mainly using your intuition, and there's only 13, and there's witch symbols. I absolutely love them, and I vibe with them. Amazing.
That's awesome. Is there any particular path? Is there any particular tarot deck that you prefer?
My Halloween, my Samhain, and it's got a black cat in each one. And I had a black cat named Blessed Ted, and I loved him to death. And I actually had that deck before that, and he was always my sidekick. And I actually have his ashes with me today.
Oh, I see.
He's my divination buddy. I always keep him on my.
So you're familiar with you in spirit.
Oh, I have footage of him pulling witches' runes and
really?
Pulling tarot cards with his teeth. I have the footage, yes.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
He is amazing. His name was Blessed Ted with double D's because he was an extra large, big black cat. Actually, I'm tattooed. There you go.
Oh,
he's got a little snip in his ear, too.
Oh, look at that.
Along with Ozzy Osbourne's autograph tattooed in me.
Sweet.
Yeah, he was awesome. Loves his fans. But yeah, no, I love divination. It's a part of my life. And
How long have you been doing that?
Reading witches' runes?
Well, divination in general.
All my life, my mother, she reads.
Oh,
and
really?
My grandmother is clairvoyant.
Oh, this is passed down as a generational thing?
This is a bloodline thing, yes. And actually, my mother is downstairs. You met her.
I did in the crowd, yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I've been doing it all my life, but the witches' runes I carried on, I would say about 7-8 years now. Yeah.
Is that something from your family, the witches' runes?
No. My mother reads tarot, but I do the witches' runes and the tarot incorporated. So that's like my energy.
What turned you on to the witches' runes?
Well, there was a spiritualist that really kicked me hard on letting me know, you know what, you need to start reading. This is your path, and get off your ass and do it. Pardon my French. And one day I asked him to do a reading for me. He said, no, you know what? Get off and do it. Do it yourself. You have it. You could help so many people, blah, blah, blah. And he made me mad, so I bought them, and I was like, I'm going to show you. And he was right.
It is a strange thing that people don't realize often enough. It's like if you don't tap into your potential or your hidden talent, it's going to eat away at you because it's like you're denying some fundamental part of yourself.
Well, I used to be a musician. I used to be a lead singer of a heavy metal band called Downrot. And from there, I stopped doing that, and then I was looking into another passion, and then obviously my passion is divination. It was a healthier route. Let me just put it that way. It guided me down a healing path, literally. I would have been self-destructive otherwise. I had a lot of bad things that happened, and Spirit saved me.
Well, this city is not for the faint of heart, but it's got a lot of heart. It's a toss-up, yeah, I know.
And I can honestly say through all my clients and people I see every day that it is an honor to work for the universe, for Spirit.
Oh, absolutely.
And to help others that are going through so many things in their life, and you're helping them guide down that path. And when people say thank you, I say no, thank you for listening because you had free will not to listen.
That's great.
I love that. And it's just beautiful to watch them going down their spiritual path and their journey and being there with them. It's just amazing. It's priceless. You can't put a tag on it.
No, you can't.
No. And I'm very thankful.
Well, that was great, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming here.
Well, thank you.
All right. Please keep up the good work.
You too.
Blessings.
Give me a hug.
Okay.
Limitless blessings is what I say.
All right.
Never limit those.
We are here with the Soul Sisters and Spiritual Vibes. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
And for our listeners, please tell us who you are.
I am Nina Soul.
I am Red Witch.
And we are Spiritual Vibes and the Soul Sisters.
I got that completely mixed. Okay.
That's okay.
And so what brings you to Pagan Pride?
We are here vending at the event. So, we're here just having fun with all the other vendors. There was like some music and some stuff going on too. So just enjoying all the
like-minded people.
Yeah, being around like-minded people, around great energy. And
so you guys run a store when you're not vending?
Yes. Yes. Well, we don't
it?
usually do vending, but
No.
you know, for the Pagan Pride, we definitely wanted to come out here and be amongst the like-minded people.
So why don't you tell our listeners about the show or about your
shop?
Your shop, yes.
So we have a shop located in Chicago. We are on Irving Park in Osceola. We have a lot of items from a lot of different kind of items. We are both eclectic practitioners. So our shop is a lot like our practice. We have a lot of different things. We have things from voodoo to different paths, different practices. Buddha. We have a lot of things with Buddha at our shop. We have taxidermy, cruelty-free taxidermy.
Cruelty-free taxidermy.
Yeah. So cruelty-free, we get a lot of our items from people that actually farm their own animals. They eat them and then they sell their remains to people like us, to witches like us. And then we use them to create wands. We use them to create different things, jewelry. We always respectfully and tastefully keep that animals kind of memory going. And
so no cats playing golf or anything like that.
No, nothing silly. Yeah, I've seen people where they'll actually take the heads off like a bird and put it on a squirrel's body or whatever. I don't know. I've seen some weird stuff, but no,
that's just too much time on their hands.
I mean, some of it's cool to look at, but I guess you're not really respecting the animal by
But I don't think respectful display is what people mean by cruelty-free.
Yeah, well, cruelty-free, cruelty-free would be like, for example, the Native Americans, when they used to hunt for their meals, they would eat the animal, and then whatever was left, they would use it.
Well, that's using everything. That's not necessarily cruelty-free. Cruelty-free would be no cruelty.
Yeah, well, I guess that would be.
It would. I think the difference.
I mean, there's no such thing as cruelty-free slaughter, but
Yeah.
I don't want to get too caught up on it.
It's fine. Yeah. No, I mean, for me, I guess it would depend, because there are vegetarians that don't believe in killing animals at all. But then there are people who do eat meat that aren't going and getting their meat out of the grocery store, where you're just going and getting, whole cuts of like certain kinds of steaks and the rest of it's going. Mm-hmm. These are people that actually farm raise their animals, so they are giving their animals love up until the point where they do up to the point where they're not where they are cruel. Yeah, where they do eat them, and then they sell their parts. And
mm-hmm. So, is this your first Pagan Pride?
It's our second.
It's your second, okay. Yes. Yeah. And how did the first one go?
The first one was great. The first one we actually did 2 tents. This year we only have the 1 tent, so it's actually a lot easier. Yeah. It was a lot easier for us, and
more uniform.
Yeah, it's more uniform. It's
right
nicer. Yeah, and I noticed that we're getting maybe even a little bit more attention than we did last year. I think. Well, both years we did good, but this year we've been really packed up in there.
Mm-hmm. Now I understand you have did you have an event recently?
No, we are going to be having the event.
Oh, it's coming up soon.
It's coming up very soon.
Wow, what date is that going to be?
October 7th.
Well, I wish I had gotten my ticket. I really do, but I know a lot of people who are like, yes, we got our tickets just in time.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of them have come to visit us here at Pagan Pride.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of people.
So what are the details about your event?
The event, we are having the SVSS first annual Witches Ball of Chicago. So at the event, we are going to be having a big meal, open bar. We're having a well-known Chicago DJ. So her name's DJ Lori. She's a woman DJ, so that's nice. We are also having a lot of giveaways. We are having an auction. So a lot of different things. We have entertainers, local artists who are going to be performing as well. So yeah, it's a lot of great things. Next year it's going to be even bigger though. Next year we're getting the whole castle.
That's a castle in Willowbrook, if I recall correctly.
And Willow Springs.
Willow Springs, excuse me. Wow.
Yeah,
I really wish I got my ticket, but maybe next year I'll be able to leave on that time.
We're already planning our next year's theme. So tickets will be going on sale in February. So go ahead and
so we better
keep your eyes
get them
out
while we
for those.
can.
Yeah, get them while you can because we sold out in a day.
And you have a accompanying hotel nearby cooperating with this event.
Yeah, the Marriott.
Did they give a discount for this event?
Yes, they did.
Oh,
they gave
great.
us a group, like a group rating. So yeah, we got like a special discount.
Yeah, they
for our
were
guests.
actually sold out.
Yeah.
At this house, so we got one across the neighboring highway there, and
we got 2 hotels working with us now.
That's great. Now,
Yeah.
how did today's event work out for you?
It was
Awesome.
great. It was
Yeah.
great. The people here are always amazing. You know, so it's always nice to be around people that are going to be accepting of everything and who are just looking to meet other people who are very much in the same practice or same path as they are. So it's nice. I think we should have more events like this.
yeah,
There
Absolutely.
should be more events for people to get together, like, you know.
that's the
like
reason
us,
we
yeah.
threw ours, is just having the community get together in
Yeah.
the evening and have a good time, just having fun, not working or doing whatever
Making
you do.
friends, getting to know
learning
people.
new people, and we have people coming from a lot of different states. So
Now, how can our listeners find you guys?
They can find us on Facebook. We are on Facebook, Spiritual Vibes and the Soul Sisters. We also have a YouTube channel. So YouTube would be Spiritual Vibes and the Soul Sisters as well. I did start my own channel with Nina Soul. And I do like different DIY videos, things like that. But
Where's your store located at?
we're located in Chicago on Irving and Osceola, near Irving and Harlem.
Do you have the specific street address?
the 7433B, as in boy, West Irving Park Road, Chicago.
Say that one more time.
7433B, as in boy. That's a suite. West Irving Park Road, Chicago.
Yeah.
And do you have a contact number, phone number?
Yeah. I have my number is 773-704-7076, and that is Nina Soul.
And mine, Red Witch, is 773-640-7886.
Okay. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah,
Thanks for
you're
having us
welcome.
again.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Best of luck with your event. I hope to make
Thank
it next
you.
year.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank
Blessed
you.
be.
Blessed be. And here we are. We are with Ellen Miles of Kathmandu. And for our listeners, if you could describe, what is it exactly that you do?
We're a trap, neuter, return rescue group. We work with cats that live in the street that are usually fed by different people. We get them trapped very humanely. We take them to clinic where they're spayed, neutered, vaccinated, microchipped, and then we bring them back. That's the easy part. The hard part is TNR turns into rescue. We have a large number of cats and kittens. We get injured cats and sick cats. And right now, we just happen to have a whole lot of black kitties, which are really adorable, but they're the hardest to adopt. We were hoping to adopt some today. We got a lot of lookers, but we didn't get any cats adopted.
Now, why is it harder for black cats to get adopted?
Because of the whole business that went on in the 1800s that people can't get over. They think black cats are unlucky.
Do people really still think that?
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing.
And they're some of the sleekest, most beautiful cats you can get.
Mm-hmm. And in cat colonies, you know, the outside colonies, the black cats are usually the most inclusive of new cats coming in. And if you live in UK, they're lucky. So we just happen to be unlucky that they were born in the United States.
Aww.
So we have a huge number of black cats, and right now adoptions are down. And I think that our local cats are being impacted by the cats and the dogs from the hurricane. All of the attention is going to them, which is great. They need it, but then our little ones are getting left behind because they didn't come out of a hurricane. They came out of Berwyn, Franklin Park, you know, places like that. Mm-hmm. But they still need homes nonetheless, and we have a lot of them.
And this is one of the largest cities in the entire country with pretty well-to-do suburbs. There really isn't any reason why many of these people who would like a companion or a pet or a friend, why they can't be adopted.
And cats are wonderful animals. I mean, they're for many, many reasons. But if you're looking at a cat or a dog, You don't have to take a cat for a walk in the middle of the winter, you know.
Cats are pretty low maintenance.
They are very
I
low.
like dogs, don't get me wrong, but yeah, if I had to choose one, I would definitely choose a cat because they're not as much work, you know.
Definitely better for city living.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very friendly. We also adopt kittens in pairs. Kittens have a lot of energy, and if you just get one, you just might get woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Play with me. Whereas if you get two, they wear each other's kitty energy off. They double the love, double the awe factor, and it's no more work. It's actually almost less work.
I have to say, walking around out here looking at all the booths and stuff, your booth with the cats was refreshing. It was fun.
There's a pretty big draw too.
It was great to see that.
Yeah.
You brought a fun energy to the.
Good, thank you. Yeah, we've been here I think 6 years, and we've always loved it. Great energy here. Love the way it smells. So, yeah, and then.
So you said that you want to send a message to the listeners out there regarding the cat situation.
I do. Get your cat spayed and neutered. Get your dog spayed and neutered.
Absolutely.
There's already too many animals.
Now, if people wanted to adopt some of the animals that you have, how's the best way that they go about that?
Go to our website, catvando.org. catvando.org. Like put the cat in the van and do them. And there's an adoption application on there. Just complete it and we'll get back with you.
All right.
Where are you located at?
Our home base is in Maywood, but we have foster homes all over.
Gotcha.
And how would the listeners get in contact?
708-829-6013 or through our website. If you fill out that adoption application, somebody will get in touch with you.
Can you give out the phone number and the website information one more time, please?
Sure, I will. And even though you fill out an application, it doesn't lock you in nor guarantee the adoption. It's just that we like to know a little bit about who we bring into our foster homes. Our website is catvando.org, and the phone number is 708-829-6013.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
And thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do for the cats.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's usually a pleasure. Okay.
May Bast bless you.
Thank you. Yes.
And you are listening to Magick Radio Chicago, streaming live from 1680 AM and Que4.org, the station that creates beauty and defends it. And today we are going over the interviews that we took at Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride 2017. Isn't that right, Peter?
It's true. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. We're like putting out some stuff for our friends out there in Q4 land as they hear about it. Now, we did talk to a lot of interesting people. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to talk to everybody we wanted to, and I don't want to forget about everyone out there. In particular, I would like to give a shout out to suicide prevention that actually had a table out there. I'm sorry that we didn't have the time to talk, but I want everyone else out there to know that there are options for those of us who are hitting hard times or have trouble coping. And it's, there is help available.
Perhaps they were busy out there doing good work.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. And there's a lot of other groups out there, such as Cat Vandu, which we just heard from. And here's another that is going out to Cat Vandu and all of our friends out there in Q4 land. And again, you're listening to Magick Radio Chicago, streaming live from 1680 AM and Que4.org, station that's creating beauty and defends it with magic.
Now we're joined by Phyllis Curott. Hi, Phyllis. For our listeners, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a Wiccan priestess. I was one of the first public Wiccan priestesses way back in the very early 1980s. I was also the only pagan lawyer around for quite a while, and I handled most of, or consulted on, or referred, or worked with most of the important legal cases that established most of the important legal rights for Wiccans and pagans. In fact, in 1993, at the time I was the first officer of the Covenant of the Goddess, and we were here at the Parliament of the World's Religions, which was the first modern incarnation of the Parliament. And we had put in a program to do a full moon ritual in Grant Park. And remarkably,
nice. That was in 93?
In 1993.
Oh, wow.
And the Parliament had approved it. I mean, they weren't thrilled that we were there, but we had programming slots, and that was one of the things that had been accepted. But the city wouldn't grant a permit. And so I spent half the Parliament fighting a big legal battle.
Well, why wouldn't they grant a permit? It's an event like any other, as long as you pay your permit fee.
Since when are pagans a religion like any other? And certainly in 1993, we were not. So it was a big legal battle. And in the end, of course, I won with the help of the ACLU in Chicago, which is terrific. They've been great allies for 30 years. And we won the right. So I also handled cases that involved wearing a pentacle or other symbols of the faith in high school or in places of work, employment discriminations where people were laid off, in very important child custody cases around the country, military rights, military pagan rights.
Yeah, people don't realize that's a problem. It's like when you have parents involved in divorce and one parent is Christian or some other religion, some other mainstream religion, and then the other parent has decided or has turned pagan. Very often there will be court cases where they decide in favor of the Christian parent.
Well, it is a state issue, right? So in New York, you're not supposed to take religion into consideration when you're making a decision. However, they are supposed to take the welfare of the child into consideration.
You would think that'd be paramount, yeah.
Right. But unfortunately, because of the negative stereotypes that are still attached to paganism and to Wicca, courts will then, in fact, find that as a way of looking at religion and coming down in favor of either a parent who's not religious or dominant religion. And it's been a long, hard slog. But I always encourage people, don't give up, get a good lawyer, and fight back. So wherever it is, I mean, that's what I did for many, many years. And then I was very involved in the interfaith movement and carving out opportunities for pagans at local levels and at international levels in Parliament, where I served finally on the board and was the vice chair of the Parliament, which was kind of amazing.
Oh, you were the vice chair of the Parliament of Rural. Okay, I am familiar with that organization. I've actually interviewed a few people.
Yeah, I was the vice chair twice. And at the last Parliament in 2015 in Utah, I was the vice chair. And it's always been about, I know that there are many members of the community who like the clandestine, who like the occult aspect, who like the rebellious aspect, the shock
They
value.
want to feel naughty, they want to feel a little dark and spooky, and it's fun, but there's so much more to it than that.
Listen, that's a big part of the appeal. The shock value wasn't for me, but it was when I found this in 1980, it was as hidden as it could possibly be in the back of the broom closet, and you didn't talk about it. But I came out really early on because I realized that the stereotypes had nothing to do with the reality of what this was all about. And you couldn't practice this spirituality, however you're doing it. Whether you consider yourself pagan or Wiccan or whatever tradition you're practicing, or you're an eclectic and you're on your own, you cannot practice this spirituality. And I call it aspirituality because I'm attendant to the things that are shared. I'm fascinated by the core practices and the essential truths that we discover by using those practices, no matter your tradition. You cannot practice this in fear. And so we had to carve out, and we're very lucky this is a country that has a First Amendment, and I happen to have been a civil liberties lawyer, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll pick it up. I'll slap on the breastplates, grab the spear and the shield, and I will fight for my community. Because they have to be able to practice this without being in fear of having their children taken away, of losing their jobs, of having their houses burned down, of having the leases for their stores broken. And so we've established those rights in almost and to have the right to establish legal nonprofit churches or temples or organizations so that you can benefit the way anybody else can. So you can have access to a public park that's available to Christians or Jews. So that's what I did for a long time.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, thank you. People don't understand that the rights we have right now have been fought for, and it's a very recent thing.
Yeah, and it's still ongoing. Believe me,
and the fight still goes on. Yeah, absolutely.
And it goes on, on the home front. My significant other has a son-in-law who practices a kind of Catholicism that, thinks still, it's back in the 15th century and thinks that Wiccans, witches are dark, evil, satanic, etc. And so in my own home, in a sense, right, the thing that I've been fighting for almost 40 years, comes home to remind me that we still have a lot of battles ahead. But that's why pagan pride is so important. That's why I wrote books. I did extraordinary public media campaigns all over the world to try to eradicate the negative stereotypes. And we have a long way to go. But I am certain, I'm not certain of a lot, and it's okay to not be certain, because the path that we're on is sort of a path of spiritual adventure and constant inquiry. And every time you think that you've peeled back a layer of the onion, that you've solved some aspect of mystery, a new one emerges, right? It shape shifts and it takes a different form, and the adventure goes into another realm.
That makes life more fun.
It makes
more interesting.
And it keeps you humble, and it keeps you modest, and it keeps you engaged and excited. But I know one thing, in the midst of all this mystery, well, I know that we are all, regardless of how we're practicing, regardless of the religion, including patriarchal religions, that have separated the sacred from the so-called mundane, from the world in which we live, from the bodies that we inhabit, right? I know, after 40 years of practicing, and of course I practice in a very shamanic way, in a way that revives these sort of indigenous paths, that there is no separation between spirit and matter, that there is no separation between what's sacred and what is so-called real. That's our job, that we live in that liminal condition where we see the two things are one. And given the state of the world right now, to me, what's happening, I have friends, I have family, I have loved ones in Florida. I live on the water in New York. It could come up and take my home at any moment. Sandy did that to people I know and love. And people died in New York City. That we are at a moment of prophesied and predicted death, destruction, devastation, as a consequence of this separation between ourselves and the sacred, this myth that the divine is something else, that it's outside, that it's elsewhere, and that this is, inanimate and to be manipulated and controlled and owned and operated and neglected and abused by us. Pride cometh before a fall. Our ancestors knew that we were living in a sacred world, in a world that was an embodiment of divinity. I believe that is our purpose now. I think that's why we were all born. I think that's really why we found our way to this spirituality, that the divine, embodied by Mother Earth, who is perishing under our delusion of separation and supremacy, that we are called. This is the moment. This is the moment of death. And what lies ahead is the possibility of rebirth. And that's what indigenous traditions know. That's what the mystery traditions, the more elaborate sort of intellectual versions, the OTO versions of what we practice, the ceremonial magical traditions, this is a through line, the Hermetic traditions.
It's something to be approached slowly, reverently, with respect, and also with the knowledge that there's more to life than we thought.
Much more. And it is our moment, I think, to serve life. That's what we're here for. To serve the divinity of life, and to heed the call that is coming from Mother Earth, and to heal the wound. I mean, we think of these paths as healing paths. This is the moment for that healing, and this is the call that is going out, and that we have to answer. Each of us in our own individual way, each of us in the context of whatever our spiritual community is, in activism through politics, in activism through community service, the kind of gathering of the clans of the tribes that we have at events like this. We have got to stop witch wars. They've been going on since before I got involved in the late 70s. They have got to stop. We have to stop fighting amongst ourselves, which is, of course, a part of this sort of nature that we have, this tribal
There's enough
thing.
problems outside the community.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The battle that has to be fought with the people who don't understand that we're living in a sacred world and that it needs to be treated in a sacred way. That's our work. We are here at this time, at this moment, in this place for that reason. And can we stop it? I don't know. Can we put our fingers in the dike, as the tsunami is coming? Probably not. Can we lessen the impact? Yes. In 1,000 little choices that we make every day, and in our spirituality and the way we practice it. And I think we can hold the seeds of this ancestral, this great wisdom, which is always carried forward, and bring it to the next generation, so that on the other side of this chaos and devastation, there is a rebirth. That's what we're here for.
I totally agree with you. Phyllis, thank you so much for all your work and all of your troubles and everything you've done on everyone's behalf.
It's good. It's good. It's really
You're
good.
one of those people who absolutely gets it.
Thank you. you.
And I hope the word spreads.
The last thing I should tell you, I completely forgot, is that I'm also the author of 3 books.
By all means, what are these books?
The first one is Book of Shadows, which was very close to being a bestseller and was in a number of other countries. Out of print now, but still available. And it was a memoir about how an Ivy League lawyer ended up becoming a witch and being a very public one. So it's sort of the record of that, and it's done in a novelistic style. And the second one was Witchcrafting, where I did a lot of deconstructing of the dogma of paganism and Wicca practices. And the third one was another memoir called The Love Spell, which was about the idea of the shadow and Eros and the role sort of third-degree mysteries in real life. And I'm back to work, and the next book will be out in November next year with Hay House. And there'll be a series of books, one on the Green Man and the encounter I had with the Green Man that triggered this whole journey into the wilderness the last 10 years.
Sounds very interesting.
And the creation principles and how the message sort of came through. And that's my work now. It's not complicated. The laws of nature are spiritual laws. And if we're going to, I know that a lot of pagans don't consider themselves practitioners of an earth religion or a nature religion, but there is not a human being on this planet that is not a child of the earth. There's no part of you that's not of the earth, including your spirit. And, I think that's the great truth that we have to rediscover before it's too late. So
Absolutely.
That's the next round.
Where can our listeners find your work?
Well, all the books are available online, Amazon and Bookfinder, and through my website. And they can find me at my website, which is my name, phylliscurott.com, and I'm on Facebook. And I'm teaching now. One Spirit Seminary in New York has asked me to come and teach on a monthly basis, so I'll be there doing this work, because I'm trying to sort of retrieve the very common pagan and Wiccan practices that we're all using. To sort of strip away what we think the purpose is and rediscover them as ways of connecting with the divinity, within the elements, within the earth, that reveal the sacred nature of how to live in a sacred world. So, yeah, that's how Facebook, use the usual social media, which I'm really bad at because I've been spending my time in the wilderness. But I'm a fast student. I'll catch up.
Well, Phyllis, thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, thank you.
It is an honor to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
I'm delighted to do this, and thanks for listening to me preach the word.
A highlight of Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride is always speaking to Selena Fox, author, community activist, radio host, and just an all-around great person in general, big mover and shaker and a supporter of the movement. Welcome again, Selena.
It's great to be back.
So what have you been up to?
Well, I am beginning my fall series of travel, so I am here again at the Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride Day. Next weekend I'll be at Dayton Pagan Pride Day, and then I'm going to Texas for the 20th anniversary of the Port Hood Open Circle, the oldest continuously functioning pagan circle at a military installation in the United States.
At a military installation?
Yes.
Wow, I'd never even heard of that. I didn't even know that happens.
Circle Sanctuary is based in southwestern Wisconsin. We started in 1974, and part of our work has been education, having ceremonies and events, but another big part has been networking and religious freedom. So that means we have had opportunities to network with people face to face, and now in these more recent times in cyberspace. So we are really thankful for your podcast and really support podcasting as an excellent way to share information, to reflect on things that have happened, are happening, and could happen, and to network with each other.
Now, that is great. Now, how long has your podcast been going?
Well, I started, I think it was like 6 years ago in various forms. The current incarnation of my podcast is called Nature Folk. And what I'm doing with Nature Folk is not only doing some workshops and some ceremonies in an audio form, but I, from time to time, have folks that I know on to talk about their work. And Sometimes we'll do special podcasts if there's some current event going on with a real need to have some pagan voices.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to become involved with Circle Sanctuary or find out more about it, what would be the best way for them to go about that?
Well, there's multiple ways. We have a website, www.circlesanctuary.org, and there we have all in one location some descriptions of the different things that we do and ways to be connected. Another really good way is to get on our networking email list. Once a month or so, we will send an email out not only with events that are happening in the area around Circle Sanctuary, but across the country, and some news about various things that are unfolding. And one of the things that we have been doing lately is helping to provide spiritual counseling for people who have been impacted by disasters. Started out with providing that help for people impacted by Hurricane Harvey. Then it expanded to wildfires and now Hurricane Irma. So it's free telephone counseling. People go ahead and either send us an email or call, and that information's up at our website, www.circlesanctuary.org. And then our counseling network coordinator will pair the person with one of our team of Circle Sanctuary ministers and ministers in training that are available to do free telephone spiritual support. Why are we offering this service? First of all, pagans are among those who are being impacted by these natural disasters. Not all agencies that are responding and doing disaster relief work are embracing of diversity or knowledgeable about how to do appropriate counseling for pagans. That said, while our service was driven by having an opportunity to give this relief to pagans who are having challenges, it's also open to people who aren't pagan. And we think it's really important when there's challenging times for people to be able to get support from their spiritual community and that larger world we're part of. So you can go and connect with our Circle Times e-list. You can either sign up online or email circle@circlesanctuary.org. Another thing that we do is podcasting. So not only do I do Nature Folk, but we follow that with Circle Talk. And this month, I'm doing a series of celebrations. And
where do you get the energy? I don't know how you do it.
Well, I feel very called to be able, while I am still in this incarnation, to really link in with folks and share information and create conversations and discussion. So Circle Talk is focusing on pagan pride across the country. Next week on Nature Folk, I'm going to talk about Dayton Pagan Pride with the organizers and some other things that we do besides the podcasting is publications. We have a membership option for people. So people can actually join Circle Sanctuary. For many years, we've been publishing a quarterly. Started out, it was just a one-page news sheet, black and white. Then it went to a newspaper format, Circle Network News. Then it went to magazines, Circle Magazine. Well, now we have Circle Sanctuary News, which is a more expanded newsletter with color photos and the latest news and things. So there's different ways of being able to connect with us in print as well. Those who are interested in being a member can either call our office, 608-924-2216, or email us or go to the website.
Can you give that phone number one more time?
Yeah, 608-924-2216. Yes, we are a pagan center that actually has an office. and office staff. And it's amazing the kinds of calls that we get in. I celebrate the grassroots dimension of paganism, but from a very early age, and I was 25 when I started Circle, I have felt that there has been a need to also develop service organizations, institutions that will be multi-generational, that will be land-based, that will be able to not only help pagans of many paths, as well as people of other beliefs, but interface with the larger society of which we are a part. So we're unique in that way. There are some other landed pagan organizations. We've been doing it since 74, and the land came in 1983. Prior to that, we rented land. And we get all sorts of questions and requests, and we do our best to try to respond to them. We do pagan civil rights work, and we've made many advances as pagan people over the last 30, 40 years, but there's still...
If I may, what would you say is among the most relevant advances that pagans have made?
I think one is that we are known now as a kind of people, a part of the spectrum of religious diversity in America and around the world.
The culture is definitely more recognized.
Yes, and there have been legal battles along the way. There was in '85 an attempt to pass legislation that would take away tax-exempt status from Wiccan churches. We might go, well, what's that about? Well...
I mean, if you can give tax-exempt status to, like, Joel Osteen, you know, why not a legitimate pagan clergy?
Well, exactly. And we helped lead the fight to stop that effort. And there were pagans, not only that we were in touch with directly, but pagans telling pagans and people of other religions and no religion who all joined into that. So in 1985, we became known as a political force. This is before Twitter, Facebook, social media. It was back when we were using the postal mail to network, as well as some telephone.
I don't envy the volume of work you and your members have had to go through with the mailers.
Yeah, we mailed out thousands.
That must have been so taxing.
Well, it was, and we went, well, here's a showdown. There's some people that are really trying to relegate paganism to second-class citizenship, and can't do that. At this Pagan Pride Day, I gave a talk on activism with Lady Liberty. And part of the reason for doing that is the theme this year is activism. And there's some stories from the front in terms of the quest for equal rights for pagans that I think people not only need to know, but need to take learnings from. Just because somebody's elected to a federal or state or any type of local government office and sworn to uphold the Constitution doesn't mean they're going to do it. We have to be vigilant regarding our rights, and we have to find creative ways to not only work together with each other, but with people of many different paths. I think another thing that has been helpful has been people standing up for the right to use various pagan emblems in the public square. Not only high school students wanting to wear a pentacle, but that big fight that we helped with, along with other people, to get the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to put pentacles on grave markers, took 10 years. And we had
this
the lawyer
was for the veterans who had been killed in the line of service overseas.
Yes, or people who had served and then died later of natural causes. And it took 10 years to have that happen. There have been other cases in which that symbol has been misunderstood. And I'm happy to report, most recently, earlier this year at Immock, the Awen, the Druid symbol, got on the list of the VA and can now be put on markers and has been put on a marker for a veteran in Texas. And we did not have to lawyer up on that one.
Finally,
so, finally. So I do think being able to be aware that it is important to be vigilant regarding our rights, and then learning a bit about the history of what we've been able to do over time. The Fort Hood Open Circle that I mentioned earlier has been around for 20 years. In 1999, the group was asked to have a reporter come and cover the fact that they were doing a spring equinox ceremony. They thought about it, they checked with the chain of command and all of that, and they said, okay, you can observe it, you can write about it. So an article was written. It was a positive article. But a congressman from Georgia, Bob Barr, saw that and decided this was not right and launched what I called Bar Wars to try to take away the right of Wiccans in the U.S. military to practice their religion at military installations. So that was another battle that we fought. I'm happy to say that got won as well. But, Pagan Pride Day, part of how Pagan Pride Days came to be across the nation and in other parts of the world was the idea that if we can talk about paganism, have pagan people not only be together and celebrate our paganism, not trying to convert anybody, but be present in the public, that this can help build bridges of communication with the larger public as well as with the pagans and each other. So you would think after all these years of Pagan Pride Days all across the country that people would know that what we're trying to do is celebrate nature, celebrate the ancient ways in some new ways, and have equality, liberty, and justice for our people and everyone.
You would think, yeah.
You would think. But in Philadelphia, just recently at the Philadelphia Pagan Pride Day, a group of people purporting to be religious, I say Christian with quotes. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Did not say, except if they're pagan. They had a bullhorn. They were shouting out hateful things. They were disruptive. This is wrong. In the public square, yes, we can express ourselves, but somebody's religious bigotry should not be stopping the religious freedom of our people.
Who's showing up at their churches with megaphones, right?
Well, and so I'm doing a call out for the Philadelphia Pagan Pride Day. Folks, Lady Liberty League is continuing to work on upholding rights. And even when we think we've made advances, we still have to be vigilant. And when bigotry raises its head, we have to be smart, take action, think through what is going to be an effective strategy, not only to address people that are trying to suppress us, but to lay the groundwork to prevent it from happening. There was a festival in Florida a number of years ago, and there were people trying to shut the festival down. It was being held on private property, but haters were really trying to shut down the pagan festival.
One thing that I find is actually, reprehensible or ironic about American culture is that, like, for instance, in the 1950s, Billy Graham was the one who was originally quoted with the phrase that this is a Christian nation. And I always found that to be not only hypocritical, but quite frankly, just advertising.
Well, and it's false.
It is false, because the founding fathers did not decide that this had to be a Christian nation. If it was, they would have handed control over to the Church of England or to the Catholic Church. But they didn't. They saw the effect of the long-term effect of the Dark Ages. And they realized that this fledgling nation will gain no leverage or any ground whatsoever if we just hand control back to the same exact tyranny. And it still keeps popping up. The people think that Christianity, or at least fundamentalist Christianity as we know it, is the mainstream culture in America. And they don't really realize that these are actually politicians that are in the pocket of some fringe cult that actually wants to control law. They want to control what's allowed, what's not allowed, and what version. There's a woman in Texas, I believe, what is she, the governor or the mayor? She tried to pass a law stating that everybody must go to church on Sunday or they'll be arrested. There's I forget what state it is, one of our southern states, that tried to put up a memorial to the 10 Commandments in front of the town hall, which I think was hilarious because another group put up a statue of Baphomet, and they had no legal grounds to actually try to dispute it. You know, if your religion is allowed, so is ours.
Well, and that's a really good point. So both in the public square, as you're talking about, as well as in the private sector, we are having some clashes going on. Well, in Florida, part of what we decided to do, Lady Liberty League, was we had people ask us for help. It's an all-volunteer organization. Some people do donate to help cover our expenses, and that's good. We had a Lady Liberty League activist actually go to the church leaders meeting. So they had people from different churches, and the group that was organizing it had this somewhat private, but it wasn't totally secret because we found out about it, meeting. Well, our guy went in, and he said he gave his rev name and everything. They didn't question the fact that he could be a pagan priest, and he was there hearing all this one group just putting out lie after lie about pagans and trying to stir up the hatred and build alliances with these other churches in the area. And then he basically revealed himself as a minister who is pagan and started deflecting the lies. So that created a big ripple effect. Decided to go ahead and have the festival. There were people that showed up to picket. This is Florida in June. Very hot.
Let's keep in mind, this is a state that arrests people for feeding the homeless.
Well, and I think the good news about this was that not only the festival got to happen, but when the protesters were there and being upset, the pagans came with cold bottled water and fed the protesters. It was basically, they out-Christianed the Christians, in terms of, doing unto others as you'd have them do to you. And then everything kind of diffused, and then people started realizing that really pagans have hearts. We do charity, we care, and these are just a few examples from the front. Lady Liberty League now has gotten so many cases, people calling us, writing us. We have a Lady Liberty League help request form at our website. You go to the Circle Sanctuary website and then check under our work. You'll see Lady Liberty League. That's how you can submit a help request form. We have to do some restructuring. We do weekly staffings to track all the different cases we're doing. Some child custody, some defamation, some employment issues. You would think here in 21st century America, especially after paganism in its various forms had made so many advances in the public square and in society as a whole, people would get it, that we deserve equality, equal treatment. People need to treat us equally, and we need equal rights. Well, we have to give corrective feedback from time to time, and that is a way that people can get involved with us, is to follow the Lady Liberty League Facebook page. We're also on Twitter. When we have a call out, our action alerts, then people can help spread that on social media. It's really important that we as pagans find ways of working together, of sharing information, and recognizing that by that connection, we're all stronger and we can uphold the principles upon which our country was supposedly founded.
It's very important work you do, and I'd like to circle back to something you talked about earlier, and that was membership of the Circle Sanctuary.
Yeah.
What are the details with that? How much does it cost? What does that entail? What do people get for their membership?
Yeah, so for membership, we have different levels of membership. We do have some discounts for students and people serving in the military. We have not only the membership newsletter, but there's some, depending on what level it is, I won't go through all the complexities, but you can see it at the website.
It can be found online, right?
Yeah, online. And some people do the benefactor level, and that really does help us. And in return, people are able to attend our events without registration cost and that type of thing. We've been having much larger network where people can affiliate with that without any cost. Some people choose to donate rather than actually be members, and that's an option too. We have a variety of different programs. Part of what we are seeking to do is to sustain the organization across the generations. You know, I'm getting up in years, and part of the reason we launched the membership program was to do a best practice for other nonprofits so that those people that really see the work of, and yes, it is a pagan institution, see the work that we're doing and the help that we're providing to really support that, to make it possible not only to carry on what we're doing, but to be able to expand on that. So another thing, way to connect, go back to your question, is we have events. We not only have events at our center in southwestern Wisconsin, about an hour's drive from Madison, Wisconsin, but we co-sponsor events. We support events such as Pagan Pride Days in a variety of different parts of the country. And some of us who are involved with the organization go and speak at various places. And so there's a whole events piece where we meet face-to-face in addition to cyberspace. Another way to connect is through some of our live streaming Facebook feeds. I tried one out today with the help of Gretchen, and part of the reason we've started experimenting with live streaming on Facebook is to make it possible for some workshops, and I'm kind of test driving this, to be able not only to be connected with by people at this event, but maybe are working at the food drive area. I talked to a woman and said, I really wanted to be a workshop, but I was taking in food donations. I said, you're in luck. We did a live Facebook stream. But also people that are too far away to really be able to come and be here. So one of the things we're really looking at doing is using the technology to be able to share information, to network with people, to build community, to support community.
Now, roughly 30 years ago, I remember seeing an interview where the interviewer had mentioned that scientists were just beginning to finally embrace the Gaia principle, that this Earth is a living organism and that we are part of that living organism. And it goes back to the ancient wisdom that what we do to the world, we are in effect doing to ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I guess it was gaining some ground over the years, but then the powers that be just decided to up and ignore that. Do you think that this is now the time for pagans to stand up and begin to start defending the Mother Earth?
We, not only pagans, but all humans really need to come together and get the human species out of the terrible twos. What are the terrible twos in the human lifespan? That's when a human is getting kind of obsessed with self, me, and hasn't been toilet trained. Well, we need to clean up our messes, and we really need to pay attention that we are just part of a much larger web of life. And I think one of the really exciting things that I've seen happening are pagans are getting involved in interreligious work. And certainly this has been going on. I started doing this back in the 60s, even before I founded Circle, in terms of the quest for racial equality. But increasing numbers of pagans are being out as pagans at conferences and other kinds of endeavors, organizations, to join together with people of other religions and spiritualities and beliefs for common purposes. So one of these, the Parliament of the World's Religions, actually started in Chicago in 1893. Well, it was 100 years before the next one happened, and in 1993, pagans were among the different world religions that were part of that. And there have been parliaments ever since, every few years. Another one's coming up next year in Toronto. There's been an attempt to have them in different parts of the world. And I have been at all the parliaments or involved in some way with all the parliaments since 1993, and I can say without exception, the environmental crisis, challenges have been brought up and discussed, and people of many different beliefs have been networking together to take that message out further. But we can't just look at people in the religion sector. And at one of the parliaments, there was the call to the guiding institutions. And it was pretty much saying to the people at the conference, not only do we need to have this discussed as part of our religious communities, we need to be in touch with business and media and government and education and all of these. I do think there has been some greater consciousness about the need to live and be green, but sometimes it's greenwashing. It's more superficial. It's kind of a marketing thing for some people. Oh, well, we recycle this and this. Yeah, but where are the investments of that corporation going? Are you supporting fracking? That's not a good thing. So part of what I think needs to happen now is to deepen an understanding about that interconnectedness you're talking about, and realize that even though the problems are vast, that we as individuals can take individual action in how we live our own lives and who we connect with. And social media, I know sometimes people spend way too much time on their mobile devices, but it can be really used for the good. So what I suggest that people do that really want to work for the planet and to get a healthier world and a sustainable environment, yes, do that social media, share information, be part of working for the good, but also take some time to get off your devices and go and just be with nature. You can do that in a city, in suburbia, in small town America, rural America. You don't have to go into the midst of a wilderness to be able to commune with nature. And I do think that that's something that humans will benefit from, not only to have stress release by being part of that larger natural world, but to tune in and get some messages from that larger web of life of which we're part that can guide us in terms of how we can be part of the solution instead of the pollution.
Too true. Well, thank you so much, Selena, for coming in and for all your work and everything you've been doing. And I hope we all can keep this argument going for years and years and years and many years to come in a much cleaner earth.
Well, and I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to be back with you. And I guess I'll say one other thing, because I gave my talk on activism with Lady Liberty. Mm-hmm. You know, there was talk about, America being the so-called Christian nation. Well, part of what I did in my workshop today was point out how much ancient paganism, symbols, concepts are hardwired into the foundations of our nation. And not only is democracy from Greece, libertas from ancient Rome, Lady Liberty started as an ancient Roman virtue turned goddess. There's a temple to libertas, liberty. And think about it. Next time you say the Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all, liberty and justice are goddesses in an ancient Roman pagan pantheon. And whether one chooses to honor liberty and justice as deities, as pagan, I do think we have to take a look at values, get humans to work with each other better, and work with that greater web of life, as we've talked about. Many blessings on all that you're doing, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
back.
Selena.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything. Among the many vendors and participants here at Pagan Pride, there are also many professionals here to help others and to help them on their way. One of which is Dr. Paul Smith. He's an MA and a PhD. Welcome, Paul. David Paul Smith. David Paul Smith, thank you. Welcome. Pagan Pride.
Well, I've been coming here a few years, and a visitor of Alchemy Arts Bookstore.
I'm familiar with it.
Great store.
Yeah. And I've been interested in stuff for, I guess I should give a little background on myself.
Sure.
Probably over 40 years. I did a self-design major at the University of Massachusetts way back in like the early 80s on psychology and spiritual development. It's probably the only degree in that. But,
Really? Yeah.
Bachelor's degree for individual concentration. You kind of make up your own thing, put your own stuff together,
That's intriguing because I know in the clinical field they tend to stick mostly with the scientific aspect, and a lot of
it's much broader.
Yeah,
Right.
I was going to say, because usually they're more clinical, they stick with the science, and generally your belief system is treated as separate.
Right. So this is kind of interdisciplinary. I ended up at the University of Chicago. I was in the there was a program in religion and psychology in the divinity school, but I ended up finishing my doctorate in human development in the psychology department. But that's a place where you can mix a lot of stuff. So religion and psychology, anthropology and such. I did a master's on the therapeutic value of sweat lodges. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And in the past few years, I've been interested in studying more of the Hermetic tradition. So hanging around the pagan community helps with that. People interested in traditional views.
Now, do you find that having a clinical background in psychology actually helps you to understand the frames of mind behind the metaphors of these disciplines?
That's a good question. I think that, going to the trouble of getting the credentials of the status quo, psychology helps put things in perspective and, from a medical and scientific view. But one thing I've learned, talking to traditional practitioners, that if I keep my mouth shut, I learn more. So they might not know psychology or they might not know medicine, but they know something. And I find in the professional community, a lot of people aren't willing to listen. And so just being a little bit more open and receptive tends to get you to kind of broaden your perspective, I would say.
Now, I understand that you have a pet project that you were here to promote.
Yeah, so recently, in the past few years, there's an international journal called Global Mental Health and Traditional Healing, and it's co-sponsored by the University of Toronto and a place in India, Christ University in Bangalore. And we're about to get our first issue out. We've run into some technical difficulties, mostly political stuff between universities. But the idea of this journal is a professional forum to promote traditional healing, talk to traditional healers from different cultural backgrounds, and to get promotions of work that look at the value. That could be something like a meditation, for instance, or Buddhist psychology, and the value of those perspectives in modern medicine. And the interesting thing about this journal is there's going to be a section to promote traditional healers themselves, so interviewing traditional healers around the world. And so they get their own voice. So you have the professional perspective, you have the traditional perspective, and I'm hoping that this will be a forum, a professional forum, to kind of integrate perspectives so that science advances.
Now, in this age of the internet where information is far more fluid than it's ever been, do you feel that this is just the right time for the merging of those disciplines?
That's a good point. I actually do. Yeah, I think that, the problem is you still need some, let's say, legitimate grounding, professional grounding, because there's so much stuff out there. How do you know what to listen to? But if you have organizations, if you have University of Toronto, there's a program, you can major in mindfulness. It's a Buddhist psychology program. Tony Tonetto is a guy I know who runs that. So having a place like a journal where there's professional kind of overview, so you know that you're going to get good quality stuff, and that helps to narrow it down a bit. Not too much fake news. I mean, right? But you can get the word out there easier because it's globalization.
I'm curious. The combination of psychology and spirituality. What advantages do you have combining them that someone who just goes one way or the other doesn't have?
That's a really good question. So I'll put my pitch in, and this is what I think this journal is going to promote. I think that in the past few hundred years, really, science has kind of shifted to a very materialistic perspective, and there's a lot of people who are questioning those assumptions, right? People who come from a more pagan perspective, kind of an energy-based perspective, or even an Eastern perspective, which thinks that consciousness comes first. There's not a lot of room for that argument in Western medicine or science. So I'm hoping that, one, if you take seriously a traditional perspective, it helps question your biases as a scientist, right? But if you're grounded in science, it keeps you from jumping to conclusions, because people will assert all kinds of things, and they're not necessarily.
And that really is the role of a professional scientist, is not to come to a conclusion, but to keep the search for knowledge going, and to prove or disprove their assumptions and continue from there. There's not really an end point.
That's right. And if science is done properly, there shouldn't be a poo-pooing of something like, oh, I'm interested in ghosts, or I saw a UFO, or
you silly foolish person.
Right. If you think that everything's alive, the proper question is, well, what do you mean by that, right? And what experiences or data do you have to support that view? That's the proper scientific attitude. Otherwise, it's scientism. It's just ideology from another perspective, right? It's no different than a radical religious view. Is that we're right, you're wrong. But a proper scientific approach is open-minded.
There are actually radical right-wing mainstream religious views that say that science is just trying to radicalize the whole scene, and they're trying to downplay the spiritual role in our lives. But of course, they're kind of trying to promote their own as in absence of that.
Yeah, I would say anybody who's trying to promote their own view and not listen to you is somebody that I would be suspect of. And anybody who's listening to anybody, because then the questions are open. And that doesn't mean you can't debate it. I mean, Sigmund Freud made this argument in Future of Illusion. What makes science good is that it put it out on the table, and you can assert anything you want as long as you can back it up. But any spiritual view should be able to be backed up, and should be listened to, I think.
Now, just to throw it out there, I myself am actually a big fan of Bill Maher. I love his TV show.
He's funny.
He is very funny, and he makes a lot of very astute arguments, and I'm with him there. But given my background and my belief system, I do feel he falls short when he criticizes people for having any religious views. His in the movie Religulous, at the end, he does the summation that basically, if you believe in anything invisible, you are an idiot. You're a dupe, and you're a fool. And I really believe that he's actually oversimplifying just for dramatic effect. I don't believe he actually is. I mean, he claims he was a former Catholic, and I get that. And he decided to become more secular, which is fine. But I really think that in breaking away, he decided to just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Drew. And I'll tell you why. I gave a paper once a few years back at a conference up in Toronto on traditional healing, and I called it the bias of the eye. And I think if you look at traditional, let's say, contemplative sciences, so your meditative traditions in the East or your mystical traditions in the West, Some of these are quite very scientific, but they're not based on things you can see, right? So in terms of standards of scientific method, you have like an experiment. Let's say it's a meditative technique, and you can replicate it, and you expect to have certain results. That's called an experiment, but the results are subjective. Now, they might be intersubjective, so you might have some teacher who's sitting there with their student, and they come up and they're like, how's your meditation practice going? And they're like, well, okay, I guess. And they say, well, what's going on? And they explain it, and then the person says, well, you're not doing it quite right, based on their explanation of their personal subjective experience. So that is still scientific, but it's more esoteric than exoteric, right? Because you're dealing with an intersubjective reality. The fact is, even standard science, which is supposedly objective, still has those problems, and there's a whole realm of philosophy on post-structural and postmodern philosophies. I mean, you're just questioning our assumptions of what is subjective is still a social construct, right? So even hard science is subjected to intersubjective kind of limitations. Okay, not getting too much.
Yeah, it reminds me, like on my own show, my personal experience and my kind of message to the world is that I think that people have the wrong idea about what religion is. I think that if you take religion as law or history or even accounting, you're always going to miss the message. It always becomes something unmovable, unshakable, and I feel that any religion, no matter what your belief system, if you approach it from the viewpoint of an artist, if you view it as art, if you view it as poetry or song or film or any kind of art form that moves you, then that is when you're getting it right. There's nothing static about it. It's a living, breathing science that allows you to experience life on a level that you previously didn't possess, but you were always capable of. Like I liked it when William S. Burroughs put out the theory that any kind of evolution mentally happens on an artistic level. And sometimes, depending on the culture, there is a lashback. Like apparently he said that when Gauguin first exhibited his paintings, people attacked it with umbrellas because he made them aware of something they weren't aware of before, and they felt like a deep resentment for it. But then nowadays, nobody would think twice about it because we're all used to seeing that kind of art.
Right.
And in doing so, the artist evolves the culture.
Yeah. I would say one essential aspect of spirituality, you made me think of a lot of things actually, but one essential aspect is the creative process and change. I gave a talk out in the UK a couple years ago now, I guess, and it was on creativity, spirituality, and hypnosis. I'm part of the Society for Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis, and I think that anything that promotes a kind of a growing and transformation is at the heart of spirituality. And that's why I think that an important distinction that is popular these days is that you'll hear this, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, right? And there's like...
I've heard that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out in the literature. And I think what that refers to, and it's related to my dissertation actually, where I looked at the spiritual and religious values of psychotherapists around the world. And spirituality has to do with some kind of phenomenological experiential process. And it usually is related to good things in terms of personal transformation and growth and maybe, societal growth. But things that are more, ideology has to do with like, follow these rules and this is this historic truth and we're right, you're wrong. That doesn't seem very helpful in terms of global mental health, let's say. So I agree with that.
I think it could be argued that the culture or the group mentality of humanity as a whole has maybe been held back by that particular way of thinking. That maybe what we're doing to Earth and what we're doing to our own society is basically kind of our dark night of the soul. Everything that we think life is because we've been taught that way isn't working out. And I think people are beginning to realize that, and other people are clinging with their life, and they're willing to bet our lives on that.
I think, I've got this book in my head that I haven't gotten out there yet. Mm-hmm. I'm going to call it something like the broad perspective, because I think, I had an interesting question since I was very young on why don't, if supposedly everybody's potential is enlightenment, right? Whatever that means. But, this potential for enlightenment, if it's there in everybody, why isn't everybody enlightened? Because I think that there's also kind of an inherent tendency in human beings to just be kind of stupid. You get stuck. You might, obviously you grow if you survive to the adolescence. You've learned a lot. You've learned language. You can kind of take care of yourself. You don't have to wear a diaper anymore. But often we get to a point and we just kind of plateau. And if you look at the mystical traditions, then people, like in a monastery, there's a constant push to continue to change. And that takes a lot of work. Even if it's just doing yoga or martial arts, it's constant practice. So if you want to grow and reach your potential, then you gotta work at it. And I think there's this tendency in human nature to just kind of push yourself well enough so you can kind of get by, and then you get stuck there, and you don't want to think anymore, right? You don't want to learn about new perspectives, and
you
then
operate on habit.
Right, you operate on habit, and then you develop policies like we're not going to let anybody in the country, we're going to kick everybody out who's different from us, and we're just going to stick with what we know because that's true and everybody else is scary. So spirituality is important, not because it makes you a better person, but it also, I think, is in the interest of the human race to continue to try to make ourselves better individually and as groups, because then we can learn to get along better and function better. But that's my belief at this point.
I wanted to ask you. You do an event at Alchemy Arts.
Oh yeah, I do the Spirit Board every third Friday.
Oh, I keep meaning to go. Just my work schedule doesn't allow it, but I really always wanted to be there.
Well, right now it's just every third Friday every other month. So in fact, this coming Friday.
My show Wormwood Radio is on Friday nights, so on the alternating Fridays, if you ever wanted to come by and do something on the air, that'd be something I'd be interested in. Maybe you could even do it the week before, so you could promote it. Say, hey, I'm going to be at Alchemy Arts next week.
And my show's on a Saturday, so if you're free.
I'm often free on Fridays and Saturdays, and what was I going to say? That I'm not saying that I'm an expert on Ouija boards, but I am a psychologist, so I got that going for me. But sometimes we have some good turnouts, and we get some interesting stuff. I think it's an interesting way to engage with one's unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, David, thank you so much for coming in and speaking with us. This is really interesting.
Thank you, guys. This was fun.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of great live performances here today, and now we're joined by Cheshire Moon. So, guys, introduce yourselves.
My name's Lizzie. I am the lead singer, and I also play violin and mandolin.
My name's Eric. I play a whole bunch of guitar-type objects, some of which are actually guitars, some of which aren't.
So you'd be a picker then?
I'm a picker, yeah.
What do you mean some that aren't?
I play
mandolin or traditional stuff?
Puerto Rican cuatro, bouzouki, are two of the other instruments. I do play a bit of mandolin and a bit of mandola. I also have kind of an odd assortment of older instruments in various odd tunings, and just I approach things from all kinds of different directions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. Now, I've seen your YouTube of your work, and it's really impressive. For my show, Magick Radio Chicago, I actually played The Witch in the Story, which was just incredibly clever. That the lyrics were really hilarious. If you could tell us a little about that.
That was actually written by our former fiddle player, Susan. When she brought that to us, I couldn't stop laughing when she first played it for us. So I knew that was something that we had to do. And originally it didn't have any of the improv that we do live.
I wasn't aware there was improv in there. That sounds awesome.
And it's fun stuff.
Can you give an example of some of the lyrics for the listeners?
The idea of the song is
the witch is the most unsung hero of every fairy tale.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, but usually they're the catalyst that gets things moving in the direction they need to go, either with a curse or with some kind of token that gets the hero on their way.
The boon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You should do the Glenda rant. Mm-hmm. That falls into the song. It isn't part of the song, but it's one of the things that she does when we do it live.
Don't ever let anyone tell you different. Glinda was the bad witch. I mean, she takes a little 12-year-old girl from Kansas, sends her down a road she's never seen to a city she's never heard of with no immediate support in stolen shoes. Who does that?
Good point.
So I'm curious. You guys said there's a there's a aspect of this that is improvisational. So
on this particular song, there is the storytelling interjections that happen between the verses are completely modular. There are several that we've come up with, several that I can use in any particular song, just depending on the audience, depending on the songs that we're doing either before or after, just to kind of tie everything together.
She's under strict instructions to always let me know which one she's doing any given night, because she's broken me a couple times with things I hadn't heard before.
Sprung a couple of new ones on him when we were performing live, and he didn't see them coming.
Yeah.
And you covered it very well.
Oh, yeah. Well, and as for improvising, most of that is in terms of audience interaction. We tend to play the songs pretty straight up, although we have a few songs that she does some story stuff during and around. But we also, a lot of audience interaction with us. We played last night, and a good chunk of each set was stories and talking and going back and forth.
Where did you play at last night?
We actually played at we did a house concert in the home of another fixture in the Chicago pagan community. Her name is Kathy McManaman. She was very active in reclaiming. She's part of another semi-pagan group called Random Fractions that were not able to come to Pride this year because of other obligations. But we performed in her house in the near North Burbs last night. It was a 2-hour show, which is actually on our Facebook page. So someone was actually able to get it on Facebook Live, so that was very nice of them.
Awesome. All right, now you guys had said that you've been to a number of these Pagan Pride events.
This is year 4 for this one. We've been to the Central Iowa Pagan Pride 3 or 4 times now.
Yes.
We were at Southeast Iowa Pagan Pride
earlier this summer,
2 or 3 weeks ago. We've gone to one of the St. Louis events and played down there over the course of the weekend.
The St. Louis Pagan Picnic.
It was the picnic, right? I couldn't remember specifically which one. So we played a fair amount of stuff around. We played at a couple other events, a couple kind of almost sort of trade show type things. I can't remember how to describe the one that was in Cedar Rapids.
Oh yes, it was a metaphysical psychic event. There were workshops, much like there are here, but it was a much smaller event than Pagan Pride is. But it was completely separate from Central Iowa Pagan Pride itself.
So most of the events you play are pagan themed?
Many of them are. We also play science fiction conventions around the Midwest, although we have gone out to the East Coast and out to the West Coast a couple times, so it's just a matter of how things were able to be scheduled because we had day jobs.
We're also very involved in the folk world, which is the folk music of the science fiction community, and thematically there's an awful lot of crossover. There's an awful lot of similar themes.
Do you do like science fiction themed lyrics as well?
We do have a couple of songs that are specifically science fiction. We do have one Doctor Who song. We have a song about geek girls in general within the science fiction community. It's called Masters of Library Science, and that's another fun one.
I like that name.
I was going to say that. I like that. That's so appropriate.
Mm-hmm. And what was really funny is we wrote that on the train going from Minneapolis to Seattle, going to a music convention, and we were on a train with a bunch of people going to the National Librarians Convention in Seattle. We did not know this at the time.
That's what we call synchronicity.
Yeah.
Show them the lyrics. They thought it was wonderful.
Yes.
I was like, oh yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Do you get a lot of requests for Mal's theme from Firefly?
We don't do that one.
No.
Nope.
We don't. Just original stuff, huh?
Almost predominant. Almost entirely.
Very few exceptions. Early on we would do a few covers. We will do She Moved Through the Fair occasionally now, which is a trad song. That's really the only cover that we really do anymore.
Oh, okay.
We've been involved with a songwriting group this year that involves S.J. Tucker, Renee Jansky, who was in Big Bad Gina, and is now solo, and a bunch of other friends people. And every Monday we get a songwriting prompt.
And by the following Sunday night at midnight, we need to upload a 2-minute demo of an original piece based on this prompt.
So the end result is that we've written 36 songs this year.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So we've kind of put away all of everyone else's songs. We have a hard enough time, in a 2-hour show picking out what we want to do of ours.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very rare that we do anyone else's songs anymore.
Wow, and you get this prompt every week.
Every Monday
week.
morning. Every Monday morning.
It is 52 songs in 52 weeks. And it has been one of the most terrifying and amazing experiences, just from a creative perspective.
And you're both very skilled and learned musicians. You're clearly not amateurs. And yet, so do you find that actually this forces you to be a little more creative?
Absolutely.
It absolutely does.
Absolutely.
You have to push outside of your comfort zone, otherwise you will not get it done.
It has made our songwriting process together so much stronger and both harder and easier. We work harder at it, but we communicate within it with so much more ease now after this year. We tended to write pretty slowly. We wrote 2 albums worth of materials in our first 3 years, and then the third album didn't come out until almost 4 years later. And now we've got enough. We could put out 2 albums of stuff. Some of these 36 songs, we never want to hear again. No one really wants to hear them again. But 16 or 18 songs have ended up in our regular book.
So you can probably retool these later and make them into better songs.
Some of them, yeah. Some of them, yeah, we
Some
can.
of them, absolutely. And we're also, the ones that we like, we're still reworking and we're still figuring out. We did a very fast demo, and those are actually all on our Patreon page because you got to do a little bit of business too.
Yes.
We for $1 a song, you get a song a week, and that's been fun because we get instant feedback, and it goes up every Sunday night. And
we actually recorded this week's song before we came to Pride.
Oh, it's this week's song.
Yes. What was this week's?
An Affirming Flame.
Yes. It was based.
Did that earlier.
Yes, it was based on a poem by Yeats, and it was, although the poem was not by Yeats, it was by someone else.
William Auden.
Thank you.
I'm a huge William Auden fan.
Well, the poem was by William Auden, and it was set right at the beginning of the outbreak of World War II.
Oh.
And it was just about the sudden shift in how society was functioning and how people were desperately trying to cling to their everyday lives even though everything was going nuts. And it's eerily timely. And so we
can't wait to hear this. Are you performing? Did you perform it today?
We played it last night. We didn't play it today, but it'll be up on our Patreon page tonight.
Yes.
All right. Now, where can our listeners find all this?
Patreon.com/Cheshire Moon is where the 52 Songs project is being put up. Our website is CheshireMoon.net. You can actually listen to everything that we have formally published for free on CheshireMoon.bandcamp.com. It's got an automatic player in it, so you can actually hear songs from all 3 of the full-length albums, as well as the EPs that we have put up, so you can actually hear everything that we've done.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to Twyla for actually recommending you guys when we were doing the show. So I was just kind of searching for just music to throw on the air, and then she said, look up Cheshire Moon. They're going to be at Pagan Pride. And I did, and I played it, and I was dying.
If you want anything else, let us know. I mean, we're always.
Oh, please! Q4 is always looking for original content. If you got any CDs on you, we'll be happy.
And we're here with Val Leventhal, an entertainer and one of the many performers that can be featured here at Pagan Pride 2017.
Okay, great.
Welcome, Val.
I'll double check.
So, what brings you
Thank
here?
you both so very much.
Well,
Thank you.
I was invited to participate as a performer by you, actually.
Okay, well, I was going to be humble about it, but yes, I did.
Yes, you referred me to Twyla, and who's one of the organizers. I guess.
She's the main organizer.
The main organizer. Yeah. And I'm a singer-songwriter, and you seem to think I would fit in. I'm a little bit of an outlier.
I've seen you perform for years,
yes, you have.
and I know the scene, and I know the crowd, and when Twyla came to me and just said, do you know any entertainers? It occurred to me, like, oh, they would love Val.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You're always looking for an audience that's actually listening to the words as a songwriter. It's tough to find that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, on the air, a few weeks back on my show, I played your song "Sacred Ground."
Oh, thank you. Off the CD.
Oddly enough, a strange thing, I was listening to it, and what I found was, like, oddly enough, in this age, in this time that we're living in, it's really appropriate.
Thank you. You know, I try to, I write things obviously from my personal experience, but I always try for a universal message of some kind, because, you know, that's what you write for, is to process life and try to pass it on. So
now, how long have you been a performer?
I've been singing since I was a kid, so technically about 55 years, you know, in little shows and things. But I've been writing music since I was 18, in my early 60s now. So
and you're pretty prolific on the guitar. How long have you been playing the guitar?
I've been playing since I was about 13. I never applied myself the way that I should, and I'm finding recently that I'm having all kinds of musical breakthroughs, which are really fun. I have kind of a big voice. I always thought of myself as a singer, and I've played with a lot of different bands, and I, you know, always would defer and say, well, this is a real guitar player, and put my guitar aside. And lately I've been wanting the artistic freedom to just get out by myself and play. Plus it's really tough to make a living as a musician, so
that's what I keep hearing. I'm not a musician, but I've known several, and I keep hearing that.
I have other things that I do to supplement my income, and so that I can do the music I want to do. You know, I tried jobbing and jingles and all kinds of stuff, but it just wasn't for me. I want to do my thing.
Now, despite your struggles, as you said, it's tough to make a living in this particular business. You've already produced a few albums of your own, haven't you?
I have one full-length CD, just one, and I'm getting ready to do another one. And I've got a song that's about to come out as a video.
Because I've seen your website and I've seen you on YouTube, so I guess I was under the impression that like the actual collections were much more voluminous than I thought.
I have probably 5 CDs worth of material that has never been recorded. So
you're kind of like Prince that way.
I just keep writing, you know. So I perform periodically during the year, maybe a couple of times a month, and then I have to make a living. So I have another business that I do that is complementary to music. I take care of animals all day, so that's a good thing. I love animals.
Yeah, many people here do.
Yeah. When is people's next opportunity to see you in Chicago?
As far as performance, I'm not sure. I just finished a bunch of things. I was at the Underground Wonder Bar for sadly, their farewell anniversary.
Oh no!
Yeah, they finally have had to sell it. Lonnie Walker, the owner, has had live music for 28 years, 7 days a week, and I was invited to participate as one of the all-stars because I've played at the Wonder Bar over the years. And she's closing, and I've played at the Uncommon Ground and, you know, the galleries where we met in Bucktown, and had a wonderful show at the Maple Street Chapel a few years ago because George Brown, who was running the folk show on WDCB, I believe now it's someone we both know, but I'm blanking on her name, who's running that. But he booked me there, and that's a beautiful concert venue. Which is a dream. And I recently played at the Ethical Humanist Society, which is also a wonderful.
What is that? The Ethical Humanist Society.
That's church for people who don't believe in God. It's
nice.
It's in Skokie, and they have kindergarten and preschool and lectures, and once a month they have a coffee house where they have a performer. And it's a true concert. You know, you pay a ticket, you come in, you sit respectfully, and you listen, and the performer makes a little money, and you gain some fans and sell some CDs. Their philosophy is they are all about how to live ethically, you know, respectfully, with diversity and inclusion. So it's an interesting place. They've been in Skokie for a long time.
It sounds like a good cause, you know.
What's it called again?
The Ethical Humanist Society, which is what that pretty much says it, you know.
And you know, in the big scheme of things, that's all any of us ask of each other.
Exactly.
Just treat each other fairly, and live and let live.
I write a lot of songs that I call secular gospel because they have a gospel
now, how does
flavor,
that work?
you know. Yeah. Well, because if I say God, I don't really mean anybody's in particular, and I usually say that. And in this setting, I would have to say that I'm talking about whatever your concept of the divine.
God is a concept, not as a name.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever you consider the divine to be, and I think everything's alive. So, although I never thought of myself as a pagan, I guess I fit in because that is my belief system. I don't, you know, worship any particular God. I worship.
And yet you carry a divine with you, you know. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess. I would have to say you'd fit in.
I hope so. I think so.
Absolutely, yeah. Your song "Sacred Ground" seems to really cover that pretty well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
if our listeners,
the belief that everything is alive is a pagan concept.
And that is absolutely what I believe. Yeah. And not only alive but connected. So you know, I have a new song about that.
What's that?
It's called Einstein's Quest, and it's about the unified field theory. I saw this wonderful movie that just fired every neuron. I got so excited. It's called Black Hole. Have you seen it? Hole with a W.
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's tremendous. It's basically a lecture in physics by a very entertaining fellow who has found this new branch in the last 20 years where they all the numbers lined up better, and they showed that the macro and the micro and all the patterns, and he got into Kabbalah. It was a fascinating movie, and so it inspired me to write this song, which is about that you're part of me and I'm part of you and everything's part of everything. Literally, it's really, really interesting.
Wow, I'm not even familiar with any music that actually incorporates the Kabbalah as part of the setup. It's actually a pretty progressive idea.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm talking about Kabbalah, but he was. But I'm talking about physics, so that's kind of different, maybe.
The thing about Kabbalah is if you use it as a structure, you can break down reality in any capacity. Physics,
right.
Energy,
right.
Feeling, emotion, law, whatever. You can really break it down using Kabbalah.
It's interesting how all these things line up in all these major fields of study.
I once knew a guy who actually could pick out all the Kabbalistic symbols throughout the entire Star Wars series and how they interconnect. And the worst part is he was totally right. He could talk your ears off about it, but then you're like, he's making sense.
I think there's a book, is it the Dalai Lama, where they talk about how the chakra system and the Kabbalah align almost perfectly?
I got to imagine there are probably a lot of pagan authors who've actually incorporated the two against each other. I'm pretty sure that I think basic Kabbalah would definitely fall under that category, whereas like ceremonial Kabbalah is much more complicated.
Same with Buddhism. People have taken it and made things of it, but actually it's a very simple idea.
It really is, yeah. I mean, I think people take it out of context. I think people tend to get too wrapped up in the cultural trappings.
You want to hear a funny story?
Overcomplicate something that should be simple.
Yeah, absolutely. What's that?
I have a funny story. A friend of mine who is very ritualistic, and she had a shrine, and she was wearing red, and she was studying to be a Buddhist. And I'm a dilettante. I study things. I eat things. I absorb what I need, and I discard what doesn't make sense to me, and I just move on. Of all these different disciplines, very eclectic. And she was very upset about something one day, and she'd been telling me how my ideas weren't Buddhist because I wasn't following this or that ritual. And she was upset, and I said, well, this would be a good time to go for your meditation practice. And she said, I can't do that when I'm upset. And I thought, isn't that the point? You do it when you're not upset.
Isn't that kind of like saying, like, you don't actually practice yoga because you don't have this expensive mat or a pair of lemon pants?
Exactly like that. Or you can't play tennis without, a certain kind of racket. Yeah.
Wow,
so I try to. That's what I do with my songs. I try to cut through the noise and find some kind of clarity.
But not only that, your songs are very entertaining.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's about the music too, and hoping that people will enjoy the music.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure that people will. And this is your first Pagan Pride, I see.
It is my first Pagan Pride. Yeah, I'm going to be going au natural because there's no sound system where I'm just going to be me and my guitar.
Okay. I thought you were going to go total pagan. I was like, okay. I don't think we have a permit for that.
Skyclad?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't think anybody wants to see that.
I'm sure a few of them might, but
maybe,
that's a whole different story. I think that's it for right now. I know you probably got to start getting ready.
Website.
Please. Yeah. Where can our listeners find you?
www.valleventhal.com. It's very easy. VALLEVENTHAL.
Spell it one more time, please.
VAL, Val, and LEVENTHAL, Leventhal. It's long, but it's just how it sounds. And if you go there, you can see about my voice teaching and about where I've been performing, and there's some video clips on there so you can see where I have performed. Just played at Out of Space in Berwyn, and they said they would have me back. That's a lovely room.
Now, I see you a lot on YouTube just because I know of you, but do you have a YouTube channel or are you just featured on
lots of people have taken lots of videos, some of it really bad, and just thrown it up there without my permission, and I don't really care. It's just it's out there. So yeah, if you Google me, I come up all over the place. There's some better, more recent video on my website on the video audio page, which is clearly marked at the top. And right now I'm working on a professionally done video of a song for the political moment that we're in, hopefully to help people feel better and keep on with the work. And I'm working with a guy who is a pro and in a good studio, Bob Dog Studios in Oak Park with Bill Cavanaugh, and got some great players on it. Sometimes I work solo, sometimes there's a band. If there's at my age, the players that I want to work with, you have to pay them. So, the band gets bigger and smaller depending on the budget. But I like it all. The CD has lots of really good players on it. It's not just me by myself.
Okay.
So.
Well, Val, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for attending Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride. I just know they're going to love you.
Thank you, Drew.
So go out there and knock them dead.
All right, I will.
Okay.
We're speaking with Lindsay and JJ from Sentinel Grove. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Very good. Thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm. So I heard good things about your performance. I didn't get to see it the first one. Maybe I'll try to catch you guys when you play later. But tell our listeners a little bit about what it is you do.
Well, we play pagan music. It's a mix of tribal and kind of jazzy and bluesy stuff. We travel all over as much as we can. And yeah, that's what we do. We music.
What kind of instrumentation do you use?
We have djembes, a doumbek,
hand drums.
Yeah, mostly hand drums. The didgeridoo, percussion, I would say. Lots of percussion and vocals.
You both sing?
Yes.
Nice. So, do you guys have recordings? Can you be heard online? Is there any place to stream your stuff?
Oh yes, we're on Reverb Nation, our Facebook page, which is Facebook.com/Sentinel Grove. We have links to all of our web pages that have our recordings online. We have CDs. You can download us.
Where are your CDs available?
Mostly if you contact us. We had this website this one time, and then they tried to charge us a lot of money. Like triple what we paid before, so we took our website down. But yeah, if you contact us, or we carry them on us at all
What's the best
times.
way to find you online to get those?
Probably Facebook or Twitter. We're active on that. Or if you email us, sentinelgrove@gmail.com, we're on there as well.
And you can and the best way to find you is through Sentinel Grove on Facebook as well?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did you guys start out?
Well, Lindsay and I actually went to high school together.
Oh, okay.
And
were you in music class or something?
No. We rode the bus together, and we're both witches now. We have been forever. And back in high school, we were like, yeah, we're witches. And we didn't take each other seriously. We were like, okay, you've seen the craft. Good job. And then we ran into each other years later and discovered we were both still witches. And we started singing in ritual. And then we shared our songs on YouTube with our friends, which, by the way, we're on YouTube as well. And a DJ out of Iowa City found our stuff and put us online, and all of a sudden we were #1 on a countdown that we didn't
Really?
we didn't know they were going to play us yet, and they sent us an email that said, by the way, you're #1 on our pagan countdown. So we lost it.
We did, yeah.
So much of your music is originals.
Mm-hmm. We have all original songs except for 2 covers we've recently started doing.
Which songs did you cover?
One is called Battle Raven, written by this woman named Kat. She's a friend of our drummers. We do have a 3rd member named E, 7-foot pirate. Not an exaggeration. And she wrote this Celtic song about the Morrigan, and it's a fierce song, and she gave us permission to put our own spin on it, so we changed it into, it's a drum beat out of like the Resident Evil soundtrack.
Cool.
It's a pretty hardcore song now. And the other one is called Crazy Man Michael, and it's also a Celtic song that we didn't really change up too much, about a man with schizophrenia.
Interesting.
Now, you said you guys are largely pagan influenced in your work. Is it predominantly Celtic, or do you kind of cross the board into other genres?
It's across the board.
It's across the board. It depends on our moods and our feelings when we're writing songs. That's what comes out. So.
Whatever the spirit takes you, huh?
Exactly. Yep. Very much so.
So besides today, where else can you be seen live?
We are going to be hopefully in Prairie City, Iowa on October 1st. Davenport, Iowa on October 28th at a Witches Ball, which we're excited about. We love Witches Balls.
Mm-hmm. Which one is that?
The Unitarian Church in Davenport. It's off of a street called Kimberly Road.
So all this information can be found on your Facebook?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have an events page that we try to keep pretty up to date.
Could you send some of your music to Q4 so we can play it?
Of course,
definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, we're always looking for original artists and local
Yeah.
artists to contribute their work, and so we can give them exposure.
We appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Well, thanks for stopping by and talking with us today.
Definitely. Thanks for having us.
I'm gonna try to catch your next performance.
I hope
Sounds good.
And that was just a sample of the handful of people that were available at Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride 2017. I'd like to take the moment to thank Peter Propaganda of Que4 Radio as Wormwood Radio for being my guest host for the day. And on a special note, I'd like to thank Tabitha Falk for being our tech support. Now, you have been listening to a special edition of Magick Radio Chicago's Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride 2017, originally recorded on September 10th of 2017 at Pleasant Home Manor in Oak Park and aired on Que4 Radio on October 16th of 2017 in collaboration with Wormwood Radio. Now, for more information on Greater Chicagoland Pagan Pride, their community events, or how to volunteer, please go to chicagopaganpride.org. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. And as I like to mention to my listeners every week, the magical path is a religion. Just remember, religion done right is art. Look for the art in your world. Make your lives magical. Have a good night, everyone.